this day as we pray for our nation and our elected leaders gathered in this place. Remember those who assist in their work as they deal with the issues affecting the people. You have guided us through national and personal challenges in the past. Be with us today. You have blessed our people in so many ways. Therefore, fill us all with the knowledge of your holy word, as it states that to whom much is given, much more is required. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Let's say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
This House is in session.
Announcements by Your Honour.
I am in receipt of a letter from Her Excellency the President to the Honourable the House of Assembly. 8th August 2025. Dear Mr. Speaker, I wish to inform that I shall be away from office during the period 10th to 31st August 2025 on vacation leave. In accordance with the provisions of Section 33 of the Constitution, the Very Reverend Dr. Jeffrey Douglas Gibson will perform the functions of the office of President during my absence. As the Honourable the House of Assembly will not be meeting prior to the start of my vacation leave, it will not be possible for the usual formal message to be sent to your chamber. Will you therefore please bring my absence formally to the attention of the Honourable the House of Assembly when next it meets? Yours faithfully, signed, President.
Your announcement, sir.
Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, 1st July 2025 and Tuesday, 15th July 2025 to be confirmed. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be confirmed.
The questions that the aforementioned minutes be confirmed. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. Minutes for the meeting held on Friday, 8th August 2025 to be deferred. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minute be deferred.
Questions that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Petitions, papers, government notices, private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first reading of bills, statements by ministers.
Honourable Member for St. James North.
Mr. Speaker, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Those were the words of none other than Nelson Mandela. Mr. Speaker, I come to the nation today deeply honored and profoundly inspired, for we are at a watershed moment in the history of our republic. This administration, since coming to office, as part of its commitment to the people of Barbados, anchored by its philosophy as outlined through the Covenant of Hope, have undertaken a number of key and strategic reforms so as to reposition the country looking ahead, whilst ensuring that we have the necessary tools to be competitive, maintain a high quality of life, and maximizing every citizen's God-given potential. Mr. Speaker, I want to firstly acknowledge the presence here in the chamber of the senior officials from the Ministry of Educational Transformation, as well as the students and executive members of the National Student Council, who are all central to the transformation of our education system. This statement also comes at a very important juncture, as we all recognize and celebrate International Youth Day, and I therefore recognize the presence of the Barbados Youth Development Council, who have been also joining us here this morning for this very important milestone in our country's education development journey. Mr. Speaker, the government of Barbados, through the Ministry of Educational Transformation, has initiated a plan to significantly change the education system, with the goal of becoming the leading system globally within 7 years. A journey guided by the unwavering belief that education is not just a public good and a human right, but the bedrock of national development, innovation, equity, and resilience. This initiative, managed and coordinated through the Program for Transformation of the Education System in Barbados, is a full-scale transformation crafted to produce a firm system, that is, one that is fair, one that is inclusive, one that is relevant, and one that is modern. Our vision is clear, Mr. Speaker, to build a world-class, inclusive education system grounded in Barbadian values, one that nurtures every learner, equips every teacher, empowers every school, and honors every community. Our mission is to enable the provision of quality and equitable education to all students, and it is our unwavering national promise to be accessed by every learner in every community without exception. This is not the government's transformation alone. This is not the ministry's transformation alone. The transformation of our education system must be and is a whole of society undertaking. From the teacher in the classroom to the parent at home, from the private sector partner to the NGO, from the child in nursery school to the university graduate. This administration strongly believes that every single one of us has a key role to play, for this is our shared mission and our collective legacy. Mr. Speaker, but why now? That is the question. Why now? Why is the transformation so essential to the resilient prosperity of our nation, Barbados? Transforming education in this country is not just a strategic objective, but invariably it is a moral imperative and national necessity. In this digital age, Mr. Speaker, where tablets and smartphones and online platforms are ubiquitous, the traditional model of rote learning and regurgitation is no longer sufficient. Instead, education must evolve to empower students with literacy and numeracy mastery, whilst embedding principles, as we call SAVE, and in particular with skills, attitudes, values, and excellence into every learner's journey. And by so doing, we ensure that social and emotional development are elevated alongside academic achievement. We must be also convicted of this imperative that we must view the new mode of educating our children as a movement. Notwithstanding respective governments' sustained investment in education, the system continues to face deep-rooted and systematic challenges that undermine its ability to consistently deliver equitable, high-quality learning outcomes for all. Indeed, whilst accessing education, of course, is universal, and there is gender parity, over 75% of our school leaders and teachers are trained, the system has not consistently met the standards required to prepare our students for the realities of a rapidly changing society and a knowledge-driven global economy. Data from as far back as 2010, in several reports, including the one prepared by the National Advisory Commission on Education, highlighted a number of pressing issues that had plagued the system. These included a lack of access to primary education, an outdated curriculum, an inequitable mode of transition of students from primary to secondary school, inadequate and aging school infrastructure, gaps in effective leadership, limited professional development opportunities for education officers, school leaders and teachers, and constraints with sector planning and monitoring, inadequate social, emotional learning opportunities and psychosocial support, weak school-parent relations, and a misaligned legislative framework. Honourable members, permit me to expound on each of these issues and justify the reason for change. Studies have shown that the first 5 years of a child's life are critical to their development as human beings. Nevertheless, we have an education system that must go further in preparing our youngest citizens for a life of promise and a life of possibility. Due to the lack of universal access to education at the pre-primary level, some children enter primary school without the foundational cognitive, social, and emotional skills, attitudes, and values needed for a successful primary education. This must be addressed, and if not now, when? And the question is, if not us, who? Additionally, it has been 25 years since the Ministry of Educational Transformation last reviewed and/or updated the national curriculum under the Each One Matters reform proposed by the Honourable Prime Minister when she held the office of Minister of Education back in 2000. The efforts to incorporate technology and upskill teachers and students were commendable at that time and could have been more valuable during the COVID-19 pandemic had we stayed on that trajectory. Today, we are resolved that teaching and learning cannot continue as happened 25 years ago, with the hope of preparing our students for an unpredictable future. We acknowledge that we must prepare our children for a society whose mores and norms are rapidly changing, and we must keep pace with an evolving labor market demands or the diverse interests and aspirations of learners. And Mr. Speaker, in fact, we have fallen short in prioritizing and equipping our students with critical thinking over the decades, digital literacy, and socio-emotional competencies vital for success in the 21st century. The necessity to further transform our curriculum and teaching approaches to meet the needs of our students is further compounded by the way that students are sifted and sorted for placement in secondary schools. Currently, a student's placement into secondary school is determined solely by performance on a single day through a high-stake Barbados secondary school entrance examination. This places considerable pressure on students as it does not account for variations in performance due to factors such as illness, anxiety, or other external circumstances. Moreover, it fails to capture the child's full academic diversity and abilities and raises concerns about fairness and equity and the need for a more comprehensive approach to assessment. For too long, Mr. Speaker, this has meant that approximately half of our students score less than 50% in mathematics, and 1/5 of our students, invariably 1 in every 5, scored less than 50% in English in the Common Entrance examination. Additionally, the labeling of students that occurs within our society as a result of their performance on that one day causes, in many instances, significant deflation of students' self-esteem and may lead to them having entrenched false perceptions with respect to their success or lack of it. This state of affairs does not lend to the building of students' true confidence and self-esteem and runs contrary to Mission 2 of the Mission Barbados Declaration and the Charter for the Republic, where every learner should feel empowered and capable of becoming involved in the social, economic, and cultural development of the country as confident, creative, compassionate, and entrepreneurial citizens. This, therefore, must be corrected. These perceptions, Mr. Speaker, amongst other issues, are reflected in the growing prevalence of psychological, social, and emotional challenges affecting students across the Barbadian school system. However, for many years, the Student Support Services Unit of the Ministry had been understaffed. Prior to 2020, the Student Support Services Unit was staffed by only 14 persons, including just 1 psychologist, to serve the entire national school system. This severe shortage of professionals significantly limited the ministry's capacity to deliver timely and comprehensive psychosocial support to students. With such limited human resources, the backlog of cases grew. Response times were extended, and many students with pressing emotional, behavioral, or mental health needs went unassessed or received only minimal intervention. As we all know, learning cannot take place without sound teaching. Given the changes to the learning profile of children entering the education system, principals and teachers, now more than ever, are equipped to apply inclusive, learner-centered pedagogies, such as differentiated instruction, project-based learning, and competency-based approaches. The ministry has recognized the major importance of teachers having opportunities for continued professional development training. For example, during the consultations, teachers indicated that Erdison Teachers Training College, the lone teacher training college in the country, needed a continuous professional development framework in place that allowed them to access courses year-round, and that the programs and courses offered need to be in partnership with highly ranked, globally recognized universities in order to be attractive. Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the importance in the upskilling of principals and teachers, it is equally important to engage and provide support to parents. Whilst many parents actively engage with their children's learning, several are unaware, whilst some others, for whatever reason, may be unwilling to effectively engage with schools. This lack of partnership often hinders student achievement and reinforces inappropriate behaviors and stunts the honing of positive values inside and outside of the classroom setting. And in addition to parental involvement, research has also shown that school infrastructure can also positively impact improved student outcomes. If we consider the age of our educational facilities, we will recognize that the majority of them are between 50 and approximately 200 years old. The age of these schools and their associated infrastructure impact their ability to meet the requirements of 21st century learning environments. And in addition, deferred maintenance and limited modernization at some schools throughout the years understandably leads to dissatisfaction across the board, hindering the realization of desired learning outcomes by our students. Mr. Speaker, it is evident that changes to the system necessitate changes to the legislation and education policies to support new initiatives. Whilst the Education Act, which governs education in Barbados, has served the system well, Several aspects are now largely outdated, with core statutes and associated legislation not fully reflecting the realities and demands of a 21st century education system. Many provisions were crafted for a context in which teaching and learning and school operations differed significantly from the environment in which we are in today. They do not address current priorities such as digital capture of data, digital learning, inclusive education, climate resilient infrastructure, or modern accountability standards. These gaps have the potential to limit the ministry's ability to respond to new pedagogical approaches and enforce quality standards across all institutions. And therefore, to realize the full potential of every student across Barbados, the transformation agenda is anchored in 5 strategic goals. Firstly, to raise the level of student achievement across the board. Secondly, to empower and support our educators through continuous professional growth. Thirdly, to modernize our physical and digital learning environments. Fourthly, to strengthen the internal operations and strategic capabilities of the ministry. And fifthly, and importantly, to overhaul the legislative policy and governance frameworks that shape education delivery. These goals have been deliberately selected for the following reasons. Improving student learning outcomes is at the heart of education transformation. By focusing on achievement, the ministry aims to ensure that every student acquires the skills, the knowledge, and the values necessary to thrive in a rapidly changing world, regardless of their background, school, or learning context. Teachers are the engine of the education system itself. And by investing in the ongoing development of our teachers and school leaders, Barbados can build a highly competent and motivated teacher force that is well equipped to use modern and relevant methodologies and respond to diverse needs of all of our students. Research shows, Mr. Speaker, that outdated facilities and limited access to technology also hinders student engagement and student achievement. Modern, safe, inclusive, and tech-integrated environments are therefore essential for fostering creativity, resilience, and a 21st century type of learning. Similarly, for transformation to be sustained, the ministry itself must be agile, data-driven, and strategically aligned. Strengthening institutional capacity will ensure better coordination, more effective policy execution, and improve responsiveness to national priorities. Reforming the legal, policy, and governance structures is critical so as to ensure that education itself and the education system is equitable, it is accountable, and adaptable, and aligned with both global standards and the unique needs of the Barbadian society. Mr. Speaker, I repeat that part, also linking with the unique needs of the Barbadian society. These goals will be achieved through 8 powerful and interconnected components, reimagining everything from the spaces where our children learn, to the curriculum that shapes their minds, to the way our schools are governed, all while embedding equity at the heart of every aspect of the system. Already, implementation progress is being made with the government's education transformation program. Professional development workshops are equipping hundreds of teachers and principals with 21st century skills. Construction has begun on cutting-edge facilities like the Oceania Innovation Hub, the first of its kind in the region. Public consultations have been launched on an inclusive education policy that will ensure that no child is left behind. And a new curriculum and a new ethos of continuous assessment are being prepared for national rollout. These changes are not intended, Mr. Speaker, to be cosmetic or incremental. If done correctly, these changes certainly will be transformational. So, Mr. Speaker, where are we on the journey so far? Let me take a moment to share more about the work that the Ministry of Educational Transformation has undertaken over the last 18 to 24 months. With respect to the modernization of the ministry is undergoing its own modernization process so as to credibly and effectively lead the education transformation agenda. And this includes enhancing digital systems such as the Education Management Information System and the introduction of a digital learning platform to be launched in September 2025. Restructuring the ministry to align roles and functions and workflows with strategic outcomes scheduled for completion in 2026. And I'm pleased to say that as of September 2025, the Ministry of Educational Transformation will be welcoming 20 new education officers and 6 master teachers to provide coaching to principals and teachers in various subject areas in school leadership. We have also welcomed 3 psychologists over the last 4 months. Designing a career pathway framework in 2024 for educators to promote the retention and also the motivation. We also conducted a secondary schools gap analysis in 2024, which examined the adequacy of teacher capacity and competence, adequacy of physical space at the secondary level, and when we look at the institutional strengthening and capacity, a full-scale curriculum reform process is underway. The new curriculum will feature inclusive education, continuous assessment, and an emphasis on citizenship, innovation, and resilience. Revised curriculum offerings will be seen throughout the system from September 2026, with a view to completing the first phase in 2028. Strategic partnerships have been launched with Columbia University's Teachers College so as to train teachers and principals in improving their effectiveness in the school environment. And over the past year, we've trained approximately 200 teachers and principals in developing teacher efficacy in the classroom and exploring leadership paradigms, principles, and practices. These 5-week modules are designed to expose participants to transformative teaching, with an emphasis on social and emotional learning, integrating arts, digital learning, and school and community partnerships. They also expose participants to the management of change, the difference between leadership and management, and the true meaning of educational leadership in a system that is transformed. A second cohort of teachers and principals is scheduled to undertake these year-long courses in September of 2025. Professional development for educators has reached over 1,500 individuals, and follow-up coaching is embedded so as to ensure impact in areas such as structured literacy, school improvement planning, using data for school improvement, structured approach to teaching students on the autism spectrum, project-based learning, and play-based learning. Additionally, diagnostic and early screening programs for vision, learning difficulties, and psychosocial needs have reached over 2,000 of our students. Over 600 teachers, Mr. Speaker, will be trained in the new assessment methods as well. With respect to infrastructure and technology upgrades, the procurement for selection of contractors for the upgrade of 10 primary schools under the IDB Finance Skills for the Future 2 project will commence within the next 2 months with a view with no disruption to the teaching and learning process. Through the visionary partnership with the XQ Institute in the United States, we have built the Oceania Innovation Hub, which, Mr. Speaker, is not just a school, but a living and breathing space for discovery, innovation, and sustainability. The summer camp is currently underway, and students from schools across Barbados will continue to be able to access the hub during the upcoming academic year. The beautification and upgrade of our schools is now starting and will involve government, NGOs, the private sector, and community groups. A modern school infrastructure design competition was successfully executed in 2024, which inspired local architects to envision 21st century climate resilient learning environments. 2 infrastructure-related grants from UNICEF have been sourced with a focus on putting youth and women at the center of climate resilience and safety and green and renewable energy transition for youth and education. And with respect to modernizing regulations and governance, a review and update of the Education Act is in progress and will be completed by December 2025. Mr. Speaker, with respect to communication and change management, a dedicated change management unit staffed with experts in transformation, in monitoring, evaluation, research, procurement, and program management, responsible for the overall implementation of the Education Transformation Program is operational. A communication strategy has been developed so as to ensure that key stakeholders are informed, engaged, and empowered in the process. Internally, at the ministry, we've launched the Change Champions Network, made up of volunteers across the ministry who serve as ambassadors for transformation. The conceptual framework for the establishment of a National Education Leadership Institute, aligned within what will be the University College of Barbados to strengthen school leadership, has been completed. The procurement for the development of an external quality assurance framework to support school improvement through inspections and development support is being finalized with the aim of establishing a common standard for measuring and assuring the quality of all schools, and it is expected to be completed by September 2026. The Teacher Service Commission, which will be responsible for overseeing the recruitment, appointment, and management of all teachers and educational staff, is currently in the process of being appointed. Mr. Speaker, I now move to focus on student nutrition. Student nutrition plays a critical role in academic performance, physical development, and the overall well-being of the student. This is the reason that the government of Barbados decades ago introduced the provision of free school meals at the primary level so as to ensure that all students, irrespective of their socio-economic background, can have access to the essential nutrients needed for concentration, for energy, and healthy growth. This government-led initiative continues to benefit the children of school age during the luncheon period while school is in session. However, this government took it a step further, recognizing that school meals sometimes is the only meal that students receive whilst attending school. This administration embarked on a program in 2022 called the Summer Nutrition Program, which made meals accessible to all students during the summer period. During the first year of implementation, the total number of children registered for the program was 4,218, and the total meals requested from the school meals department was 6,732, including meals served to registrants of the National Summer Camp Program. The program is a highly successful one with students from government summer camps across the island, including some private camps, taking advantage of the service. And in 2023, the ministry implemented the school nutrition policy, which was developed by the Ministry of Health and Wellness in 2022. The emphasis of the policy was just not the provision of meals, but the provision of nutritious foods that could set students on the trajectory of healthy and sustainable living. Mr. Speaker, when students are well nourished, they are more likely to attend school regularly, engage actively in learning, and perform better academically. Now, when we focus on the importance of citizenship, particularly in the advent of 21st century world activities, we look, therefore, at the benefits of technology and technological advancements. And it faces significant economic and social and environment issues. And Mr. Speaker, the globalized world is one that exposes children and youth to unwholesome behavior oftentimes, in other circumstances, immoral actions, and questionable morals of many interest groups around the world and even across our country. This has the potential to destroy the moral fabric of our communities and democratic states. And it is against this backdrop that the Ministry of Educational Transformation reintroduced the teaching of civics in the school curricula at the primary and secondary levels in 2022. The teaching of civics seeks to provide students with the knowledge, the skills, and the attitudes that they may become informed, ethically responsible, and engaged and active citizens. The civics curriculum focuses on the study of groups, institutions, politics, and government in a democratic Barbadian society. It helps students to recognize that their roles and responsibilities in maintaining and improving these structures. And additionally, it helps them to appreciate the values, the beliefs, and the ideas that need to be protected in an effort to continue to safeguard our society. And overall, students are taught that a good Barbadian citizen is a good global citizen. The civics curriculum is designed with the following objectives in mind: to encourage students to exhibit a sense of responsibility, that they will become informed, responsible, engaged, and active citizens who can make a meaningful contribution to society; to promote an interest in civic issues that leads students to become civic-minded; to develop in students a sense of duty, moral responsibility, and a commitment to social justice; to develop problem solvers, critical thinkers, and innovators; to develop a sense of pride for the nation and its institutions; and importantly, to enable students to develop and practice social skills which create positive interpersonal relations. The civics curriculum is currently under review and will place greater emphasis on the aspects related to citizenship. Each child must make a commitment to country, to community, to family, to colleagues, and to self. In this regard, and consistent with the agenda of this government, the civics curriculum shall be named the Citizenship Curriculum, recognizing that citizenship is the highest office in any democracy. I now look to the declining student-teacher ratio, Mr. Speaker. Student data from the past 25 years shows a steady drop in the number of students enrolling in schools every year. This matches the decline in birth rates during the same time period. And from 2000 to 2025, school enrollment fell from 51,014 to 34,870 students. Projections indicate that this number will keep decreasing over the next 5 years. However, and importantly, the teacher recruitment rates have remained steady over this period. And based on this data, the ministry has seen the need for amalgamation of selective schools across the country. With a current teacher-student ratio of 1:10, amalgamation of selective schools will not place any student at a disadvantage. And I want to repeat, the amalgamation of selective schools, Mr. Speaker, will not place any student at a disadvantage. The ministry will also seek to ensure that there is a greater use of specialist skills in the areas where they are needed, given this healthy teacher-student ratio. Now I move, Mr. Speaker, to upcoming initiatives. Today, I am pleased to share with you a slate of upcoming initiatives that signal a bold next step in our transformation journey. The Ministry of Educational Transformation has sufficient capacity to provide universal access to early childhood education for all 3 to 5-year-olds starting September 2026. However, during this academic year, the goal is to develop standards for early childhood that ensures suitable infrastructure, appropriate human resources, and high-quality education that nurtures critical skills, positive attitudes, and strong values in keeping with regional and international best practices. I am happy to announce that a new Center of Excellence at Maria Holden Nursery, Gore Hill, will open in September 2025. Showcasing best practices in science, in technology, in reading, engineering, arts, and mathematics, commonly known as STREAM, and play-based learning. And more importantly, from September 2026, play-based learning will be embedded across all early childhood institutions so as to foster curiosity, inquiry, language, and social development. Mr. Speaker, by the beginning of September 2025, a comprehensive program will get underway so as to upgrade and modernize school infrastructure at the nursery, primary, and secondary levels. This includes the innovative use of resources in partnership with the XQ Institute and other philanthropic donors, so as to establish state-of-the-art 4th to 6th form academy, the Barbados Climate School at Charleston, designed to foster 21st century learning and leadership with a focus on sustainability and climate. As part of our ongoing commitment to ensuring that all students learn in environments that are safe and that are modern and conducive to academic success, the current Ursuline Convent facility has been identified for the relocation and absorption of students from the existing Graydon Sealy Secondary School facility. Plans are already in hand, and we expect to have the facility ready for occupation no later than September 2026. We are committed to continuous learning and professional excellence. All teachers and principals will benefit from ongoing training opportunities, including the continued strategic partnership with Teachers College of Columbia University, so as to build teacher efficacy in the classroom and strengthen school leadership models. And by September 2025, the second cohort of principals and teachers will access training opportunities afforded by Columbia University and Urdiston Teachers Training College. To elevate the teaching profession and ensure greater accountability, a comprehensive teacher licensing system will be developed and introduced by September 2027. This system will promote professional standard of technology across the system. By 2027, Mr. Speaker, there will be full system-wide distribution of technology with a particular focus on the distribution of assistive devices to support learners with special educational needs, thus ensuring that every student, regardless of ability, has equitable access to learning opportunities. The use of project-based learning, commonly known as PBL, will be significantly expanded across schools as a core instructional strategy as part of the transformation of our system. This learner-centered approach is expected to deepen student engagement, foster critical thinking, collaboration, and creativity, and better connect learning to real-world contexts. This ensures, Mr. Speaker, that students are not only knowledgeable, but are capable problem solvers, prepared for the demands of a modern society. So far, we have trained over 700 principals, heads of departments in core areas such as English, mathematics, science, and social studies, and senior teachers, subject coordinators in the core areas, and teachers across primary, special, and secondary schools in utilizing the project-based learning approach. This training, Mr. Speaker, will continue over the next academic year. There will also be the reintroduction of the Schools Positive Behavior Management Program under the brand VIBE, which invariably stands for Values-Driven Inclusive Behavioral Excellence and Empowered Learning Environments. This initiative seeks to foster supportive school cultures across the basic education system in the country and aligns with the UNICEF Child-Friendly Schools framework. For the upcoming academic year, the tenets of VIBE will revolve around student-centeredness, creating safe spaces, and positive discipline. It encompasses a comprehensive social and emotional learning program that will be rolled out across all schools to support the emotional well-being, resilience, and positive development of students, foundational to academic success and healthy school environments. And to this end, the Ministry of Educational Transformation has partnered with NGOs and private sector organizations so as to embark on an intensive program that will sensitize all teaching and non-teaching staff, students, and parents on the importance of raising a more emotionally intelligent generation. Now, whilst many of our children behave well, Mr. Speaker, there is an unacceptably growing number of children whose behavior will not be tolerated in our schools. And I want to repeat, whilst many of our children, and the majority of them, are well-behaved, there is an unacceptably growing number of children whose behavior will not be tolerated in our schools. It is for this reason that we are seeking to further partner with the private sector and NGOs so as to establish and operate a residential, rehabilitative, and therapeutic facility by 2028. Students housed in the facility will be required to access a full-time residential program. It will provide a range of interventions and strategies that will cater to the psychosocial, behavioral, and personal development and academic and artistic attainment of school-aged children between the ages of 12 and 18, in line with the prescriptions of the impending child protection legislation. Mr. Speaker, recognizing the vital role of families in the education ecosystem, we are launching a parent education program aimed at equipping parents and caregivers with the tools and knowledge to foster positive parenting practices and deeper engagement in their children's learning. This program will begin in September 2025. An expanded, evidence-based national literacy program will ensure that every Barbadian child, Mr. Speaker, leaves school with the ability to read, to comprehend, to communicate effectively, regardless of socio-economic realities. This academic year, Mr. Speaker, we will work harder to achieve our vision by ensuring that every child who can read in primary and secondary school has the chance and support to be able to do so. This past school year, the Ministry of Educational Transformation trained over 300 teachers in the teaching of reading, benefiting over 5,000 students in infants A and B at primary schools and special schools, as well as in remedial classes and 10 secondary schools. Mr. Speaker, this is a step in the right direction and a significant step forward. And we are proud of the dedication shown by our ministry team and educators. But we're not stopping there, Mr. Speaker. Beginning in September 2025, we will expand this program to include all classes at the early childhood level, from nursery to class 1. To support this expansion, a Jumpstart Literacy Workshop will be held during the last week of August, focusing on the teaching of reading and comprehension. And furthermore, throughout the upcoming school year, teachers will receive job-embedded coaching in literacy, ensuring that professional development is continuous, is practical, and most importantly, impactful. We recognize, however, that literacy is not solely the responsibility of our schools. It is a shared mission, one that must include our families and communities. And that is why we've placed a strong emphasis on parental engagement. During the past academic year, we hosted 5 parent engagement sessions, offering strategic interventions so as to help parents support their children's reading development at home. These sessions will continue into the new academic year, and we encourage all parents to participate actively. Once again, Mr. Speaker, we encourage all parents to participate actively. In parallel, our sister ministry, the Ministry of Tertiary Education and Training, will be conducting an adult literacy program, ensuring that no one in this country is left behind in our national literacy movement. To be clear, this government remains steadfast in its commitment. Every child who needs help learning to read will receive it between now and December 2026 in its first instance. We will ensure that all of our children can read fully, Mr. Speaker, by the age of 7. And for those who have passed that age and have not demonstrated reading competency, an aggressive intervention will be made so as to ensure that they can read. To strengthen performance in mathematics, we will roll out a nationwide mathematics program funded by the government of Qatar during the next academic year, Mr. Speaker. The program will focus on curriculum support, teacher training, and innovative pedagogical approaches that ensure higher levels of student achievement in this critical subject area. We will also be strengthening our commitment to inclusive and learner-centered education by expanding access to a comprehensive range of specialized student support services. This includes, once the diagnoses have been made, guaranteed access to psychosocial support, counseling, speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, and other essential interventions that address the holistic needs of our learners. Now, in addition, Mr. Speaker, we will encourage the development and implementation of individualized educational plans, enhanced with data gathered from the National Criterion Reference Test for students in Infants B and Class 2 with specific learning needs. These expanded services will commence from September 2025. Mr. Speaker, I now move to the new placement model and secondary school structure. Now, whilst education transformation encompasses far more than tinkering with the transition from primary to secondary school, a point I have had to reiterate on several occasions, I fully recognize the profound importance of this exercise in the lives of our students. I'm also deeply aware of its historical weight and enduring emotional significance for Barbadian parents and guardians alike. It is not merely an exam, it is a moment charged with hope, anxiety, and national attention. In that regard, I will now devote the next few moments of this statement to addressing both the proposed transition model and the broader structural reforms to our secondary education system. Now, during the widespread consultations with stakeholders in 2023, there was strong consensus on the need for transformation of Barbados' basic education system. However, several concerns emerged, and particularly around the transition between education levels, primary to secondary, and junior to senior college of excellence. And secondly, the structure and redesign of the secondary school system. We took those concerns seriously and examined them in detail. The Ministry of Educational Transformation has since held additional meetings with stakeholders, including with our teachers' unions. Consequently, we have further refined the perspectives on the primary to secondary transitional model and structural reforms of the secondary system. Outcomes of these engagements are as follows. Mr. Speaker, starting with September 2028 school year, the Ministry of Educational Transformation will modify the admission requirements to secondary schools by adding an additional process to the Barbados Secondary Schools Entrance Examination, better known as the Common Entrance Exam. The single exam will be replaced by this hybrid, more equitable, and competency-based student placement system, ensuring a fair approach to student evaluation and placement. This new model will use student performance data from classes 3 and classes 4 in combination with a modified national written exam at the end of class 3 and class 4. Incorporate a progressive student profile that will be developed for each student and continue with them into secondary school, supporting more targeted and personalized teaching and learning. Take into account both choice and geographic location when assigning school placements, with the goal of promoting gender equity in the allocation of students to secondary schools. Through these changes, we strive to support every student's unique journey, build greater equity, and strengthen confidence in our education system for all Barbadian families. Now, I want to look at the key features of the new transitional model. The scope of assessment will be expanded beyond the traditional focus on mathematics, language arts, to include social studies, citizenship, and science, fostering a more balanced and interdisciplinary learning experience. Students will have a multiple set of opportunities to demonstrate their knowledge and skills competencies through various formats, not only via standardized written exams, but also through alternative assessment methods, such as project-based work, curated portfolios, structured quizzes, reflective journals, and observational checklists. This approach, Mr. Speaker, recognizes the diverse way students learn and communicate understanding, and is specifically designed to foster deeper engagement, creativity, and importantly, critical thinking. I now move to the assessment weighting. Student placement at the secondary level will now be based on a blended assessment model comprising 50% standardized written exam and 50% continuous assessment guided by a nationally prescribed framework. This balanced model allows for a more holistic view of each student's readiness for transition. The continuous assessment component will track learning progress over time, highlighting consistency, effort, and applied understanding across multiple subject areas. As we move towards greater equity, these assessment weightings may be adjusted as the continuous assessment framework is piloted, evaluated, and improved over time. And importantly, the assessment framework is developmental in nature with targeted support for areas where students need the most help. Now, each student will transition to secondary school with a comprehensive learner profile, documenting their academic strengths, areas requiring support, learning styles, and developmental progress. This profile will serve as a critical tool for receiving schools, enabling teachers to differentiate instruction and implement targeted interventions from day one. Furthermore, and importantly, it will also be directly informing the development of individualized learning plans or individualized education plans for students with specific learning needs, ensuring that support is both proactive and student-centered, grounded in real data. An appeals process will be established in circumstances where the assigned school placement has led to undue hardship on the student and/or the family. All appeals will be reviewed by a designated panel appointed by the ministry. In consideration of appeals will be subject to space availability at the preferred school and will be managed in a manner that preserves the integrity and fairness of the overall placement process itself. Through this mechanism, Mr. Speaker, student welfare will be paramount whilst ensuring that the placement framework is robust and impartial. Now, each secondary school will typically admit students using a 50-50 ratio. That is, half of the admitted students come from within the school's designated catchment area and half from outside of the catchment. And whilst all schools set a minimum entrance score to help guide placements, students living within the catchment area may still be admitted if their score is slightly below the minimum. These minimum scores may vary each year depending on the overall performance of the student, cohort, and the number of available spaces at the school. Now, it should be noted that there will be no disturbance with respect to the gender parity policy that has existed for decades, for the allocation of our students. I now move to the teacher preparation and quality assurance. Beginning this academic year, the ministry, through the Erdiston Teachers Training College, in collaboration with a globally recognized university, will launch a focused training program for teachers in the areas of continuous assessment and differentiated instruction. Educators will be equipped with curriculum guides featuring practical examples of assessment strategies aligned with the national framework, and so as to ensure consistency and quality across schools, dedicated support teams will be established to assist teachers and monitor the effectiveness and accurate implementation of these assessment practices. And finally, with respect to the new placement model, a specialized task force has been established so as to refine the methodologies for student placement and to oversee the development of a national item bank to support the new assessment system. Now, as part of the broader curriculum reform, special emphasis will be placed on play-based and project-based learning, particularly at the foundational levels, so as to foster creativity, critical thinking, and deeper engagement amongst young learners. Now, regarding the secondary education structure, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Educational Transformation proposes that all secondary schools offer a comprehensive 7-year program designed to address the diverse academic and technical and vocational learning needs of the students. This will be buttressed by a renewed concentration on the social and emotional needs of students to support their holistic development. The government of Barbados believes that our children, and our young people in particular, must be engaged in structured activities with either uniformed or service-oriented clubs. Now, after consultation with the Social Partnership and Social Justice Committee, the ministry will require the participation of our young people in these activities, either through extracurricular activities or in school activities. This level of engagement, Mr. Speaker, highlights the importance of the service to country and to others. This will commence from September 2026, but we will use this coming academic year to build up the capacity of all of the clubs and all of the uniform groups. Additionally, the government has also been consulting on what a national service framework could look like for persons between the ages of 16 and 18 years old, for those who are not in secondary school or post-secondary institutions. Statements addressing this will be made at a later time, whether there should be a national service for our youth. Furthermore, the government plans to implement targeted pull-out programs, all at levels of secondary school, to provide remediation for students who need that extra help, with special focus on the critical first 3 years. For the gifted students who demonstrate necessary emotional readiness, opportunities for accelerated progression will be offered. If students are not yet ready emotionally, enrichment activities will be provided instead. This approach ensures flexibility, so every student has opportunities tailored to their needs and their potential. In this regard, personalized learning plans will be developed for both remedial and accelerated learners so as to support their individual educational journeys. To ensure a well-rounded education for every Barbadian child at the secondary level, students in Forms 1 through 3 will follow a broad and balanced curriculum that includes English, mathematics, science, social studies, and citizenship, coding and robotics, foreign languages, financial literacy, agricultural science, physical education, digital and media literacy, visual and performing arts, including art and craft, and music and theater, moral education, home economics. Now, this curriculum will be further enriched by a diverse range of electives and a strong focus on career guidance and social and emotional learning. As stated before, Mr. Speaker, students will also be required to belong to a uniform organization, whether that be Sea Cadets or Scouts or Guides or service clubs like the 4-H or the Key Club, as a core part of their secondary education experience. Teachers and support staff with these students will be carefully selected and specifically trained so as to foster a nurturing and supportive learning environment. For students in Forms 4 and 5, the focus will shift to consolidating core studies and participating in community-based activities. And these students will continue to study core subjects whilst engaging in community-based activities. And upon successful completion of Form 5, students will be awarded the Barbados National Secondary Diploma. So as to further ensure that our secondary education system not only prepares students academically, but also equips them for meaningful engagement in society and the workforce, the ministry is introducing a more dynamic and future-focused upper secondary program. This enhanced approach balances strong academics with real-world experiences and career-oriented pathways, reflecting the evolving aspirations of our students and the demands of a modern economy. Students may spend up to 2 years in Form 6, where they will have the options to pursue Cape-level subjects or ministry-approved equivalents, study additional CSEC subjects, CVQs, and/or City and Guilds qualifications, or ministry-approved equivalents. And lastly, retake subjects through any ministry-approved examining body, including Cambridge, City and Guilds, and the International Baccalaureate. Now, Mr. Speaker, as part of the ministry's commitment to provide a relevant and forward-looking education system, secondary schools will offer various programs that reflect national priorities, student interests, and emerging sectors of the economy. These programs include science, technology, engineering, and life sciences, and for example, traditional geography, biography, chemistry, physics, agricultural science, but also environmental science, IT, and green engineering, bringing it into the modern era. Secondly, business entrepreneurship and finance, and in particular, principles of business, which we all know, accounting, but also economics, logistics, financial services. Thirdly, technical and vocational education and training, and in particular, mechanical engineering, electrical technology, cosmetology, digital media, animation, and fashion. And perhaps one day, I'm hoping to wear one of the fashion being designed by our students. Fourthly, creative, performing, and digital arts, and in particular, music, theater arts, visual arts, animation, business studies, all related to the arts. And lastly, in humanities, English literature, Caribbean history, law, sociology, tourism, and modern languages. These are the areas of specializations, and they were identified through a survey of students in Forms 4 to 6, through consultation with the Ministry of Labor, as well as Export Barbados, which we also know as BIDC, so as to ensure alignment between education and emerging workforce needs. Now, entry into Form 6 will typically follow the successful completion of Form 5. And student placement will be guided by a combination of factors to ensure alignment with students' interests, abilities, and future goals, and therefore are taken into account, including student choice, an area of interest, performance in ministry standardized proficiency assessment, CSEC, CVQs, and City and Guild results, career guidance input, successful completion of the Barbados National Secondary Diploma, and after Form 5, students may also choose to enter the workforce or pursue post-secondary and tertiary education. Now, in addition to the establishment of the Barbados Climate School as a dedicated 4th to 6th form institution, consideration is being given to create the creation of more specialized schools, starting with a school that focuses on artificial intelligence education, and another that will partner with the National Sports Council so as to establish an academy of excellence in sports. These institutions will serve students from forms 4 through to 6 with admissions based on choice, interest, and demonstrated competency. Now, Mr. Speaker, I want to focus on the change in nomenclature of the educational levels across the school system. Now, traditionally, the Barbadian education system has used the term classes at the primary level and forms at the secondary level. Now, so as to ensure greater alignment with regional and international standards and to improve clarity and consistency in communicating educational levels, it is proposed that both forms and classes be replaced with the universal terms grades. This change will enable easier comparison with education systems in other Caribbean territories as well as worldwide, especially for purposes such as data reporting, student mobility, curriculum mapping, and program design. And therefore, beginning in September 2026, the following grade-based structure will officially replace the current terminology. Nursery will be known as pre-primary. Reception will be known as kindergarten. Infants A, grade 1. Infants B, grade 2. Class 1, grade 3. Class 2, grade 4. Class 3, grade 5. Class 4, grade 6. Form 1, grade 7. Form 2, grade 8. Form 3, grade 9. Form 4, grade 10. Form 5, grade 11. Lower 6, grade 12. And upper 6, grade 13. Now, to reposition the education transformation, Mr. Speaker, in the hearts and minds of Barbadians, not as a distant bureaucratic process, but as a dynamic, inclusive, and culturally meaningful national movement, the ministry will, over the next 12 months, implement a comprehensive communications and engagement strategy. This strategy aims to significantly deepen public participation and build a shared sense of ownership across all sectors of society. Specifically and importantly, the ministry is targeting a 30% increase in stakeholder attendance and participation at ministry-hosted events within the first year of its rollout. And beyond engagement, the strategy is designed so as to enhance public understanding of the goals and benefits and progress of the transformation agenda. And within 18 months, our objective is that most Barbadians will be able to accurately identify the core pillars of the objectives of the reform effort and a marker of greater clarity, transparency, and trust. Central to this effort will be the launch of a national cultural campaign, strategically crafted so as to embed education transformation within the collective consciousness of our nation and of our people. Through both the traditional and digital media, this campaign will aim to reach at least 60% of the population using the voices and stories and aspirations of Barbadians so as, Mr. Speaker, to inspire, encourage dialogue, and to foster collective support. Now, crucially, the ministry will not undertake this journey alone. Active partnerships with NGOs and businesses and cultural organizations, community groups, and also the diaspora networks will ensure that messaging is co-created, also amplified, and localized so as to reflect the diversity of Barbados. Now, these efforts are intentionally designed to shift the public narrative from one that sees education transformation as technical and procedural to one that is understanding and energizing, accessible, and central to Barbados's resilient prosperity. This national movement speaks to our highest hopes as a people, and that generates the broad-based collective momentum needed for meaningful transformation. For the past 3 years, Mr. Speaker, the ministry's transformation agenda has been guided by a singular and compelling vision, a bright future for every child. That vision remains unchanged. In fact, it has deepened in both meaning as well as purpose. And based on extensive and focused engagement, Today, I am proud to announce and introduce officially the new brand identity for education transformation in Barbados, Every Child, Barbados. This new identity is not a departure from our founding vision, but equally, it's an evolution. Mrs. Speaker, it represents a renewed strength and strengthened commitment to build a more inclusive, responsive, and future-ready education system. One that puts the needs, the rights, and potential of every child at the heart of national development. Now, let me be clear. Every Child, Barbados, is not a replacement, but is a reaffirmation, Mr. Speaker. A bold and unified statement of our promise to every child, regardless of background, regardless of circumstance, with the opportunities and support needed to thrive and to succeed. More than a slogan, Every Child, Barbados is a national call to action. I repeat, it is a national call to action. And because true education transformation cannot and must not be the work of government alone, it must be a whole of society movement. One thing that brings together parents and teachers and students and school leaders, faith communities, civil society, business, industry, and every citizen committed to shaping a brighter and more equitable nation, Barbados. It is a mission that requires leadership, and in particular, political leadership, given the fact that many people are ambivalent about change, and even when the change is necessary for their health and their empowerment. Mr. Speaker, we are committed to transforming this nation through education. This mission, this call, is for all of us, because the future of every child is the future of this nation. We are already making significant strides through policy reform, investments in school infrastructure, curriculum renewal, teacher training, and the expansion of digital tools and learning environments. So, what does this transformation mean for you? And yes, all morning, Mr. Speaker, I've been speaking to the chairman and the country, but this one is really for the country to rally around and for me to speak directly into their hearts, into their minds. Firstly, to our students, it means that regardless of your socio-economic background, you will be able to access world-class teaching, modern facilities, and the skills needed to succeed in life, contribute to national progress, and carry forward the proud legacy that we all love, Barbados. To our principals and teachers, it means that you will be exposed to the cutting-edge leadership and teaching methodologies being given by the professional freedom so as to innovate and be supported with the resources to inspire every learner and lead a culture of excellence that shapes the next generation of Barbadians. To the parents, you will be given the peace of mind that your children are receiving a quality, future-ready education in a safe, supportive, and well-equipped school, empowering them to dream bigger, achieve more, and thrive in a rapidly changing global community. For labor and private sector, this translates to a future-ready workforce, equipped with the skills, the adaptability, the innovation, and the resilience needed to drive economic growth, strengthen competitiveness, and secure Barbados' prosperity in the global marketplace. And for the community and civil society, the transformation on which we are embarking will lead to an empowered citizenry, stronger social cohesion, and a shared responsibility in nurturing the next generation to build a more just, inclusive, and resilient Barbados. Mr. Speaker, we have much to do. That is clear. There will be challenges. There will be critics. But Barbados is rising, and our education system must rise with it. Mr. Speaker, and to the nation, let this be the era in which we change the trajectory of this great country, Barbados. Let this be the generation that looked our children in the eye and said, we didn't wait, we didn't wait, we acted. We didn't delay, we dared to make the Barbadian education system the #1 education system in the world. Mr. Speaker, education is not only the great equalizer, it is the great transformer. And with it, we will forge a Barbados that is smarter, a Barbados that is stronger, and a Barbados that is just for all. Our goal is to transform the education system, not simply by incremental changes, Mr. Speaker. We seek to support learners of all ages, of all abilities, preparing them for modern jobs with essential skills, values, emotional intelligence, pride, and purpose as citizens. To thrive as a nation, we need caring, committed, and resilient individuals dedicated to their country, their community, their family, and, Mr. Speaker, and importantly, to themselves. This is not just an education project. This is a nation-building project, one that goes beyond exam results and test scores. And I want to repeat, Mr. Speaker, this initiative is one that goes beyond exam results and test scores, one that reimagines what it means to learn, to lead, and to live with a purpose in a 21st century Barbados, in a 21st century world. Education transformation cannot and will not succeed without the people. That means you. Our transformation must be co-created and not imposed. Everyone has a role, from the teachers to the technicians, school children, to CEOs, media, mentors, tradespeople, technologists, everybody in society, Mr. Speaker. We must build schools of excellence in every community, lift every learner, and celebrate every teacher. We must ensure that the child in rural St. Andrew or St. Joseph has the same opportunities as the child in Bridgetown or in Christchurch. We must leave no child behind. We must leave no teacher behind. We must leave no school behind. We must leave no parish behind. This country is moving forward together in education. And finally, as Minister with responsibility for education, I pledge to the people of Barbados that the Ministry of Educational Transformation will report openly and regularly on the progress of our education transformation program, because accountability is the bedrock of trust. And together, we will ensure that every promise made becomes a promise kept for our nation's children. This commitment will be honored through the establishment of an independent oversight committee chaired by our Prime Minister, the launch of an education transformation microsite and results dashboard, and regular and ongoing engagement with key stakeholders, including school leaders, teachers, students, parents, teachers' unions, principals associations, and the wider public. Now, in closing, Mr. Speaker, let me thank wholeheartedly, unreservedly, our partners, our parents, our students, our teachers, our principals, and all of those who interact with our school system, including our guardians, either institutionally, like our teachers' unions, or those who provide services to them on an ongoing basis. In addition, let me thank some of our international partners who have stood with us: the Inter-American Development Bank, the XQ Institute, Michael Murphy Studios, the Teachers College of Columbia University, the World Bank, UNICEF, the European Delegation, the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean Development Bank, and others who have sought to bring technical expertise, vision, and solidarity. Mr. Speaker, let me also thank the Chief Education Officer and her officers in the Ministry of Educational Transformation, who have shown what is possible when we dare to imagine something better. And I say publicly, thank you. I must also give thanks to the Permanent Secretary and the other officers in the Ministry of Educational Transformation and the Change Management and Strategic Innovation units, which have provided incredibly valuable support in this entire journey. I also wish to express my sincere gratitude to former ministers of education, whose leadership and contributions were instrumental in shaping the foundation of the transformation agenda. Their vision, their commitment, certainly has helped to pave the way for this bold new chapter in Barbadian education. I extend heartfelt thanks to the Prime Minister, the Honourable Member for St. Michael North East, for her vision, her leadership, her unwavering commitment to national development. Mr. Speaker, it is through her bold vision and the space and the time and the resources that she has afforded us that we have been empowered to pursue what is unquestionably the most consequential mandate of the Barbados Labour Party administration in a generation: the transformation, and I repeat, the transformation of our education system. Her steadfast belief in the potential of every Barbadian child continues to guide and inspire this national endeavor. Mr. Speaker, as you know, for the Prime Minister, everyone matters. And above all, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to the people of Barbados for your patience, for your passion, and certainly there has been a lot of passion, your unwavering participation in this undertaking. Your voices, hopes, dreams have been heard and have helped to shape this agenda. And your commitment continues to be the driving force behind our shared mission so as to build a brighter future for every child. But Mr. Speaker, we know the journey ahead is long, and we certainly cannot travel it alone. So today, the government of Barbados extends an open invitation to every Barbadian. Walk with us, stand with us, and work with us for every child, Barbados. And to the nation, let us move forward, not with hesitation, but with hope. And let us be bold, let us be united, and let us be firm. And I simply say, let us make this transformation not just possible, but unforgettable for every child, Barbados. I'm obliged to you.
Congratulatory and/or obituary speeches. Personal explanations. Motions for leave of absence. Notice of motions for adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance. Orders of the day.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of standing orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42 subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
The question is that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. Government business is the order of the day.
Six. Order number 6, sir. In the name of the Honourable Minister of Labour, to move the second reading of the Family Leave Bill 2025.
Honourable Member for St. Peter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Growing up in Rosehill, Mr. Speaker, I had the privilege of hearing political policymakers, political persons involved in politics over many years speak to philosophy, speak to what guided them. There was a time in my life when I was a little bit despondent because it sometimes seemed as though people, ministers in particular, would make pronouncements. Members of political parties would make pronouncements. And I often wondered what became of those pronouncements. I will say to you, Mr. Speaker, that as time went on, I became particularly attracted to the Barbados Labour Party after I heard a contrast being made. And the contrast was this. One group of people spoke to the manifesto as being a guide, a document, and the other one, and I remember this term very clearly, spoke to the manifesto as a contract with the people. And that caught my attention, and from that point, I made it my business to recognize and to assess whether or not the manifesto was actually treated as a contract. Now, the matter of paternity leave was included in the Barbados Labour Party manifesto of 2018, and it was included again in the manifesto of 2022. And in this manifesto, the 2022 manifesto, which I know is already a document of this Honourable Chamber, the manifesto says at page 16, we will also enact legislation to allow for paternity leave for fathers who want to be part of the critical first months of their children's lives, while supporting their wives and partners through this sensitive period. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to be part of a process that will reflect a promise made and a promise kept. The budgetary presentation in 2025, which was delivered by the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central, spoke very directly about strengthening families, strengthening the institutions that support families, providing resources for families. And that presentation included instituting paternity leave and also extending the existing maternity leave, so that the bill before us today, the document which is the subject of this debate today, has as its primary purpose the instituting of statutory paternity leave, the extending of maternity leave. Now, to respond to the question, why do we use the term family leave, we initially explored the idea of amending the Maternity Leave Act. It is called the Employment of Women Maternity Leave Act, the existing legislation, Cap 345A. But we came to the conclusion that it was better, for a number of reasons, and I'll speak to those maybe a little bit later, to have a new piece of legislation that acted as an umbrella piece for paternity leave and maternity leave. And so the bill will speak to both of those matters, along with, when it comes into effect, repealing the existing, what I refer to as the existing legislation, the Employment of Women Maternity Leave Act, Cap 345A. Now, This bill is the result of significant work, significant effort. It is the result of 2 assessments by the actuary. It is a result of a thorough study which was conducted by an international expert through the kind office of the Inter-American Development Bank. It was also subject to extensive consultations with the social partners. We engaged the social partners, we heard, we consulted, we deliberated, we amended, adjusted, and the bill is the result of some very sober deliberation by the Board of the National Insurance and Social Security Service. And all of those interventions, all of those studies, all of those assessments allowed us to be able to get to the point where we have now produced a bill that this Honourable Chamber can debate, and after this chamber, the other place will be able to debate it. To get to this point, after all of the engagement I've spoken about, I have to commend, to give sincere thanks to the officers of the Ministry of Labour, Social Security and the Third Sector, who worked hard to put this legislation together. I have to give significant thanks and a show of appreciation to the officers of the National Insurance and Social Security Service. And to cap it off, I have to give sincere gratitude to the Office of the Chief Parliamentary Counsel. That office for us as policymakers, Mr. Speaker, is a significantly important office. And I don't think that we can thank them enough. This government has been hard at work for over 7 years. And because we've been so hard at work for over 7 years, the Office of the Chief Parliamentary Counsel has been at full throttle for that entirety of time, for over 7.5 years. They've been working before, but we have been kind of stepping on the gas a little bit. And so I thank the Office of the Chief Parliamentary Counsel for their work in pulling all of this together, engaging with us, being patient with us, particularly those of us who are non-attorneys, explaining to us, we explaining to them. We are thankful. Now, the foundation of this bill, Mr. Speaker, is twofold. Firstly, this bill seeks to strengthen families in this country. It seeks to strengthen the family unit. It seeks to strengthen the ability of parents to bond with their children. This bill also seeks fundamentally and philosophically to have fathers, to provide fathers with a greater ability to take care of children, to share in the care work that is part of the raising of children, particularly in those early months of the child's life. That care work, Mr. Speaker, has often fallen, sometimes almost exclusively, on the mothers of our children. And fathers have, for some time, been asking to be a part of that process. And I'm not talking about asking to get involved, but to be allowed from a statutory perspective to have some time to be able to engage in the raising of their children, and partnering with the mothers of their children to carry out the work that is necessary, that care work that is so important. So the idea of parental equality is bound up in the foundation of the bill that we debate today. This bill also reflects government's human-centered approach to national development. And Mr. Speaker, I do not want us to overlook this. This government at all stages, and we've heard it in the statement just delivered by the Honourable Member for St. James North. We know of the engagement, people's assemblies, we know of ideas fora, we know of all these situations where government has engaged with people, because we believe that policy has to come out of real needs. We believe that policy, good policy, has to address the needs of the people of this country. And so our policies, and those policies when reflected in legislation, are policies that are people-centered or human-centered. We believe that people must be first. People must be involved. Some of the societal challenges that we see around us have some relationship to the family dynamic that exists in our country. And we believe that while we address these challenges in various manners, one of the directions that we must use, or one of the directions we must travel, is to address our families. We have heard much, but I'm going to focus particularly on the fact that fathers need to be involved in the raising of their children. Now, there are some specifics in this piece of legislation, this bill, the proposed legislation. It is still a bill until it has gone through all the various aspects of the process. But the specifics of this bill include extending maternity leave, statutory maternity leave, from 12 weeks to 14 weeks. It includes providing for 17 weeks maternity leave in the case of multiple births. It includes, Mr. Speaker, changing the maternity grant to a child grant. It also includes establishing for the first time in Barbados paternity leave, statutory paternity leave. It allows, Mr. Speaker, for extended leave for the father in the unfortunate situation where the mother dies either in childbirth or very soon after childbirth. It prohibits discrimination in employment on the grounds of paternity. It also continues, and this is something that was included in the maternity leave legislation, what we call the maternity leave legislation, that 6 weeks for sick leave in situations where the physician determines that there is an illness related to or caused by the pregnancy. Pregnancy is not an illness, but sometimes illnesses are brought on by pregnancy, and there is that 6 weeks that will continue to be allowed to the mother if there is illness related to the pregnancy. We've also, Mr. Speaker, removed the restriction of 3 confinements per employer. And we have also made, we've made an amendment to what we consider to have been an anomaly, maybe a mistake, where maternity benefits were based only on contributions and not contributions and credits. Now, I'll speak to these in some detail. I will endeavor not to detain the House overly or past what is necessary and reasonable, but I have to give some detail on these various provisions. Now, the extension of maternity leave. I speak to this, and some may believe that some of what I will say is obvious, but if you've lived as long as I have lived, And given that you have lived longer, Mr. Speaker, than I have lived, you marginally? Oh, I thought it was significantly. Sorry, I was guessing based on the color of the hair. But we'll realize, and even in your practice, Mr. Speaker, your practice now and your practice before your current practice, we realize that there are a number of these things that we take for granted that are not as obvious as we think they are. Maternity is a period of physical and psychological stress. Physical and psychological stress on the mother of what will become a baby and a youngster and a kindergarten and a person who goes through from kindergarten to grade 13, as we will go. 14 weeks has been considered for some time as the international standard for the minimum period of maternity leave. And so from 1980, I believe, no, not 1980, I think it was maybe 2000, when the International Labour Organization adopted Convention 183, and that set out 14 weeks as the minimum for maternity leave. Now, that standard was not arbitrarily set. I happen to have some understanding of how conventions are developed, having been involved in developing one of them, at least myself. And the development of a convention like this would have gone through the process of a technical meeting, a meeting of experts, before it got to the point where there was the actual conference committee that met over 2 years to come up with this. And so that deliberation benefited from expert input, but it also importantly benefited from the involvement not just of government representatives, but of worker representatives and of employer representatives. And so that 14 weeks, Barbados, unfortunately, over the years, had not met that standard. The Employment of Women Maternity Leave Act is a 1976 piece of legislation, but we had not reached that minimum provision. And we believe, Mr. Speaker, this government believes that this is the time for us to move from 12 weeks to 14 weeks. That period of time and the extension allows for the recovery of a woman's both body and mind with respect to having carried a child, having given birth to a child. That time is necessary. The time is also necessary to bond with the child. I have heard, and I'm sure you have as well, Mr. Speaker, mothers bemoaning that they soon have to go back out to work. That connection. And so the recognition that we need to give more time, the recognition that we need to do it within the ability of the National Insurance Scheme to be able to handle it, we have made that decision to extend maternity leave. I will also say to you, and this I only found out about in the lead up to the birth of my own children, having gone to some classes. I actually forget the name of the classes, but no, they weren't antenatal, it has some other name. But I found out, I heard for the first time the term postpartum. And those fathers who were in that class were told to prepare themselves physically and psychologically for postpartum. And I found out then that postpartum depression is a real thing. All of these factors, Mr. Speaker, say to us that additional time is needed for women, mothers, to be able to handle the stresses of pregnancy and of childbirth, and all that is wrapped up in delivering and that initial bonding with the children. Now, situations of multiple births is one that we also had to consider. We have heard representation from women and organizations that multiple births present a particular challenge for mothers. And you know, many years ago, I was in Miami, in a place where you used to hear more Bajans than Americans. That place called Hialeah. And so I know there were two hotels that we used to stay at. One was Plaza, I don't remember the other one. But I went into the mall that was always full of Bajans, Westland Mall, and I saw a mother with twin strollers. And at one point, it felt like bedlam broke out. Both children were screaming. Now, apparently they were both hungry. And I saw the mother. I really empathized with her. I saw the mother attend to one, and the other one is screaming. And when she had gone to a certain point, she attended to the other. And it seemed as though the first one started to scream again. And I thought, up to that point, I had told myself that if I got children, I would want to have twins, because my father was one of a twin. After that experience, and that was just seeing something happening, that went completely from my consideration. Not that it had anything to do with what would have happened, but the desire went completely from me. It is necessary for women, mothers, in situations of multiple births, to have additional time. It is additionally stressful to give birth to twins, triplets, quadruplets, multiple births, and so this government in this bill will be allowing statutorily for 17 weeks of maternity leave in cases where a mother gives birth to more than one child. I mentioned that one of the points of this piece of legislation is the change from maternity grant to child grant. Now, the grant has always been for the purpose of assisting with the raising of the child. But the philosophy underlying referring to it as a maternity grant presupposed that all raising of children was on the part of the mother. Now, we know that that is not the case. And in our focus on ensuring that both by word and action, we speak to the realities of our society, we are using this opportunity to change from maternity grant to child grant. From time to time, and increasingly, the mother of the child is not the primary caregiver. But we will continue to use the same process as in the existing legislation, so that the presumption will be that the mother is the one given the primary responsibility. But if that is not the case, then those persons, those officers at the National Insurance and Social Security Service will then move to the father. And if the father is not the one giving the primary care, then the other relative or other person who is the caregiver. That person, whoever that person is, will be the one in a case where there is a grant. That person, that primary caregiver, as determined by the officers in the National Insurance and Social Security Services having gone through all the processes, will be the recipient of the child grant. I mentioned that one of the major points, or one of the major developments that brings us to this chamber to debate this bill today, is the establishing of paternity leave. It is necessary for full parental participation in the raising of our children. And full parental participation means that both mothers and fathers must be involved in the raising of our children. And so for the first time in our country's history, we will be allowing statutory paternity leave for fathers. That leave will be for a period of 3 weeks. We would have been happy to have had a longer period for paternity leave, but paternity leave and all benefits arising from the National Insurance the National Insurance Scheme, or those funds managed by the National Insurance and Social Security Service, must be affordable. And that is why it started by indicating that we are at this stage due to, among other considerations, 2 reviews by the actuary to make sure that what we are doing today is sound, sustainable, and does not impact the viability of the National Insurance Scheme. The paternity leave, Mr. Speaker, those 3 weeks must be taken in the early months of a child's life. The bill that we have before us allows for all 3 weeks to be taken in the first 3 months, or it can be divided where 2 weeks are taken, no less than 2 weeks are taken in the first 3 months, and that final week must be taken before the end of 6 months. So all of the leave must be taken within the first 6 months of the child's life. Those early months are important for the child. Those early months are important for the mother of the child. And so for the twin reasons of allowing a father to participate in the care of the child and bond with the child, as well as sharing the responsibility and sharing the load that falls to the mother, those reasons have caused us to say that this leave must be taken in those critical early months. Paternity leave, and I said this at Pool Woods on May Day, and I say this to all the men. It probably does not relate to you so much, Mr. Speaker, or me, but there may still be some of us who need to hear this. Paternity leave is not vacation. Paternity leave is not 3 weeks vacation. Paternity leave is to allow for full involvement. Not involvement when you come home from work. It is to allow for full involvement of fathers in the raising and rearing of their children and bonding with their children. It is also for full participation with the mother of the child in the work that is involved in caring for a newborn. Sometimes there's the unfortunate development where a mother dies in childbirth or immediately after childbirth. And those times, Mr. Speaker, are devastating, and I can only say that based on having heard just a couple of people speak about their own experience. Traumatic, psychologically weakening, but this bill allows that if that unfortunate situation arises, then the paternity leave will be extended by 3 weeks, an additional 3 weeks, if in the unfortunate situation of the death of the mother, becomes a reality, that leave will be extended for the father. The qualifications for maternity leave and paternity leave we have left relatively standard in terms of what is necessary in terms of informing the employer, demonstrating the fact that the person is the father. We have left those basically intact from the existing legislation. Allow me at this point, Mr. Speaker, as I address the matter of paternity leave, to applaud the trade union movement in Barbados. And I know that particularly the Barbados Workers Union, for probably more than 20 years, has been advocating for paternity leave at the statutory level. And we know that because for maybe that length of time, there has been, in some collective agreements, the establishing of paternity leave. And so, even before government has gotten to the place where it has established or is intending to establish paternity leave statutorily, there are some organizations, some employers who, through the advocacy of the trade union movement, and I'm aware of the Barbados Workers Union in particular, have been able to have paternity leave included in collective agreements. We applaud employers as well who have moved ahead with granting paternity leave. And I remember very early in my tenure as minister responsible for labor, an employer approached me. We actually set up a meeting at the ministry, and that employer encouraged us to move toward establishing paternity leave statutorily. And that employer approached me and we had the discussion. That employer did not write to the newspaper to say that he supported strongly paternity leave, but that there was nothing in the legislation, there was no bill. That employer did not take that route. That employer actually approached us and we were able to discuss. And I applaud the employers who, even without having paternity leave on the law books, have gone ahead and implemented it, included it, working with their trade unions, included it in the collective agreements. We've also, Mr. Speaker, in this piece of legislation, made sure that paternity cannot be discriminated against in employment. So you will find both within the substantive bill as well as in the consequential amendments reference to the fact that paternity will not, you cannot use, an employer cannot use paternity as grounds for discrimination. So it is included in the Act, and it is now listed in the, it will now be listed, but not now, once we go through the process, it will be listed in the Employment Prevention of Discrimination Act as one of those prohibited grounds. And discrimination is bad however you look at it, and as we speak to parental equality, the same protections that a mother will have with respect to maternity, a father must have with respect to paternity. And so paternity cannot be discriminated, a man cannot be discriminated against because of paternity. I mentioned earlier that the matter of sickness related to pregnancy is maintained, the allowance for 6 weeks, up to 6 weeks, if a physician determines that there is an illness. Again, sometimes we believe that these things are obvious, but only when there is experience. I did not realize when I was a teenager and a young man how much hypertension comes as a result of pregnancy. I did not realize how much, I don't know, I'm not sure if it's called diabetes, but elevated blood sugar happens as a result sometimes of pregnancy. There are various illnesses that attend a very natural process. And again, it speaks to the psychological and physical stresses that are a part of pregnancy. And that is the reason why there must be involvement on the part of fathers, and there must continue to be the recognition that there will be, from time to time, illness that results from the pregnancy, and the mother must not be forced to take some of the maternity leave to deal with those situations. Pregnancy is not an illness. Maternity leave is for pregnancy. Attending illnesses have to be treated separately, and so that 6-week period continues to be provided in the bill that we are debating here in this chamber today. The matter of restriction of confinements. Now, Mr. Speaker, this restriction is definitely not in keeping with government's attempt to address our demographic challenges. In the ministerial statement that was shared earlier by the Honourable Member for St. James North, I heard him to say that there was a time when our school complement was over 50,000. I also heard him to say that it has now reached somewhere in the vicinity of 30,000. That is a significant decline. I will also say to you that restricting confinements flies in the face of the results of the Population Commission report. It flies in the face of the actuarial review. It flies in the face of the census that was recently concluded. The replacement rate for our population has been determined to be 2.1. 2.1 births per woman. 2.1. Replacement. Our birth rate is 1.7, estimated at 1.7. We've also been made aware, and I share that in this honorable chamber in the discussion when we piloted the revitalization measures for the National Insurance and Social Security Service. The number of children taking the Barbados Secondary School's entrance examination, the common entrance, has gone from 4,500 this year to under 3,000. That's a reduction of 33% in a couple of decades. Mr. Speaker, we have demographic challenges, and having this restriction is counterintuitive in the kind of situation that Barbados finds itself. Now, removing the restriction will not in and of itself address the demographic challenge. But as a government, we believe that our policies, our legislation must be coherent. And if we are speaking to raising our population, we are now estimated to be less than 270,000. At a time when we've been telling people that, well, we are approaching 300,000, we used to be 250 many, many decades ago, and we would tell people, well, we are probably 280, 290, to find out that our population is less than 270,000, told the country that we have a challenge. We know that addressing the challenge will have to be multi-pronged. We cannot, while addressing that challenge, be saying to our women folk only 3 confinements per employer. Now, I said we know that removing that restriction will not in and of itself see an increase in the birth rate, but it sends a signal, it says something. And for us as a government, all our pronouncements, all our policies, all our legislation must say something to our people. And so that restriction will be removed in this bill once it becomes law. Another matter addressed in this bill, Mr. Speaker, is the requirement that in order to receive the child grant, now a child grant is a benefit that is paid when a mother does not qualify for the leave and the benefit that comes with the leave. There is existing a requirement that in order to qualify for the child grant, that both parents must live together, because there's a combining of payments and contributions. That requirement, regardless of our views on family life, regardless of our views on family structures, that requirement penalizes the child. And Mr. Speaker, this government has been very clear on its views on children, that children are important in the development of our society. My neighbor in Parliament, the Honourable Member for St. Michael's South, piloted, and we now have as law, it has been the Child Protection Act, and that sent the signal of this government's focus. This government is focused on children, their development, and their protection. And so we are removing that stipulation because the stipulation goes against the interests of the child. No child should be penalized based on the choices of that child's parents. And in this bill, we are ensuring that a child is not penalized because of the choices of that child's parents, the choices that the parents make. And I thought that we needed to make that very, very clear. This piece of legislation has a strong focus on children. A country will only develop if its children are taken care of. The Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central often speaks to the fact that a nation is defined by how it treats its most vulnerable. He focuses quite a lot on those in the twilight of their years. I focus today on those who are at that very early stage of life, the dawn, as he refers to it. And so we are focused on our children, and we are not going to disadvantage a child because of the child's parents' choices. Now, we are aware, and I think I have to say this, there are many cases of challenge in our families. Those who practice law, those who practice family law, those who work in the Child Care Board and in our social services and in our family, the agency that we will, Social Empowerment Agency, recognize that there are some significant challenges in our family structures. Our courts are sometimes filled with parents in significant disputes. There are challenges of support. There are challenges of custody, challenges of access to children. And this bill, Mr. Speaker, is brought to this chamber acknowledging those challenges, but recognizing that those challenges must not stop us from doing what is right by the children of our country. I will use, though, this opportunity to encourage parents, and I can only but encourage parents to consider their children even when they themselves have differences, when there are disputes, even when their differences are irreconcilable. I encourage our parents, fathers and mothers, to consider their children. There must be some level, as much as you may hate a person, there must be some level of cooperation for the sake of the child. I'm not being prescriptive about what is to happen, but I'm just asking parents, even in dispute situations, to consider their children. Now, this bill, Mr. Speaker, and its consequential amendments also removes a stipulation which prevents a mother whose child happens to be born outside of Barbados from accessing benefits. Now, we know why that stipulation was placed in the initial legislation. But what that restriction does is that it prevents a woman who goes abroad for holiday, pregnant, may either be delayed in the country or may give birth before she expects to give birth prematurely. That person then becomes technically unable to access the benefits. And so what this bill will do, and what the Act will do once the bill goes through the process, is that the Act will speak, the bill currently speaks to a mother who is ordinarily resident in Barbados, so that those situations where a mother is not living overseas, but has gone overseas and has given birth, is not prevented from accessing the benefit. So the wording will be a mother who is ordinarily resident in Barbados. We have also, Mr. Speaker, with respect to qualification for benefits. Now, there's an interesting thing, an interesting situation in the regulations. All benefits are based on contributions and credits. So let me explain a little bit what I mean when I say credits. Contributions are when funds are deducted and paid in, or for self-employed persons, when you contribute your minimum of $1,200 per year. Those are contributions. A person who is on sick leave or employment injury leave will receive payments from the National Insurance Scheme. Those payments are referred to as credits. The person is not receiving an income from their employer or from their business if they're self-employed, but there is an amount being paid every week. Those payments are calculated generally the week's pay divided by 6 and paid for, I think, Monday to Saturday, 6 days. Maternity leave is the only short-term benefit that is not calculated using both contributions and credits. And in working through this, and I don't mean to be offensive, but it was said that the Maternity Leave Act must have been written by a man. It is the only benefit where credits, so if a woman, a mother, is on sick leave for some period before what is referred to as confinement and does not have enough contributions, even though she has credits for the sick leave, she will not be entitled to the benefit that is intended for her. And so this bill, part of what it will do when it becomes an act, is to ensure that maternity, the benefit that is associated with maternity leave, will be based on both contributions and credits. And so we are regularizing what I hope was an oversight in the preparation of the original legislation. Well, I shouldn't say the original, the base legislation, which is the Employment of Women Maternity Leave legislation. We had some representation made with respect to the confinement period. The current legislation speaks to 28 weeks. We, in our consultation, very extensive consultations, we have come to understand that that confinement period should be changed to 25 weeks because there has been, at various points in time, delivery at an earlier number of weeks, and there has been, and these words cause me some challenge sometimes when I hear talk about viability, but I think we know what that means, where the child lives. And so this bill will reduce that confinement period qualification from 28 weeks to 25 weeks, roughly 6 months. Now, the bill also continues to include that there are offenses if an employer refuses to adhere to the legislation that is standard. There's also an offense if an employee knowingly gives false information related to maternity or paternity. So that is to say, knowingly try to play or abuse the system. The proposed changes, Mr. Speaker, that I have shared with this honorable chamber represents an advancement of our social policy stance. It is being done recognizing that the National Insurance Scheme is in a position at this time, after government has implemented most of the revitalization measures, after government has done its recapitalization of the fund, and after measures have been put in place to ensure sustainability of the fund. The actuary is of the view that the National Insurance Fund is able to accommodate these developments that I have shared today contained in this bill. I will also say to you, Mr. Speaker, that when Cabinet took the decision, we took the decision on what I refer to as a worst-case scenario. What I mean by a worst-case scenario is that it assumed an uptake by fathers 50%. That 50% of fathers will take advantage, will use the provision for paternity leave. Now, I say worst case because there has been no paternity leave program put in place, statutory, that has seen a 50% take up. That is unfortunate, but I say that to say two things. One is that the impact, the initial impact on the National Insurance Scheme will not even be as much as we estimate it to be, but I'm also saying it to use it as an opportunity to encourage fathers to use it. I would love, the Cabinet would love, the entire Barbados Labour Party government would love if Barbados was the first country to have a 50% take-up of this measure. We would be happy, Mr. Speaker. I encourage fathers to take it, to use it for what it is intended to be used for, to bond with children, to share the care work with mothers, and ultimately to build a better society. Now, this bill is titled the Family Leave Bill, or will be titled, but the bill is titled the Family Leave Bill. And the act will be titled the Family Leave Act 2025. Family leave is ordinarily understood to be leave that is given that can be shared between the mother and the father as determined by the mother and the father. This bill is titled the Family Leave Bill, but the bill does not include leave that can be shared. And that is because as this government enacts legislation, develops policy and enacts legislation, we are always looking not just to the present, but to the future. And so we, as I said right at the beginning, family leave is used as an umbrella for maternity leave and paternity leave. But it is our intention as we move forward and whenever the next election is, I don't want to risk asking the Honourable Member for Christchurch South. He called the last one, I don't know if he will call the next one. But whenever that is, I expect that we will be able to come back and further develop this legislation. As we move forward, we have to create, and once the scheme is able to accommodate it and continue to be sustainable, we have to move forward and have that period of leave, some additional leave, where mothers and fathers can decide how they apportion it. At this point, we are establishing that minimum for fathers. It could be more if, at a future time, we have a situation where there is that leave that can be apportioned. There is also the expectation that we will be able to include leave for adoptive parents as well. We believe that that is something that is necessary, and we will want to add that to this bill at some point in the not too distant future. Mr. Speaker, this bill, the Family Leave Bill, is an expression of our concern as a government for our children. It is also an expression of our recognition that the family unit is an important unit of society. It is a recognition that mothers and fathers play significant roles in raising the next generation, the generation after them. And so as a government and as a country, we must facilitate that involvement. We must facilitate their ability to be fully involved in that important responsibility. This bill reflects our concern that care work falls disproportionately on the women of our society. This bill reflects an understanding that while both biologically and maybe from a common sense perspective, a woman, a mother, will generally be a primary caregiver or the primary caregiver to a child, that there is significant room and actually a necessity for fathers to be involved in that care work of the child. It also reflects our understanding and our recognition that the mother, even as primary caregiver, should be able to benefit from the sharing of care work. So I'm talking about the sharing of care work on its own, participation, but I'm also talking about the sharing of care work as it relates to taking some of the load off of the mother. It recognizes that true development, real development, genuine development of a country must include fathers and mothers, must include men and women. There must be a whole of society approach to development. This bill recognizes and seeks to put in place in this area that whole of society approach to allowing our society to grow, allowing it to be built, allowing all of our people to achieve. I am happy, Mr. Speaker, that at this stage in our country's development, we can continue along the road of emphasizing protection and production. We are all participants in the project of nation building. We are all participants in developing this nation. I'm happy that we have reached the stage where, for the first time in our nation's history, we can give this statutory provision, benefit of paternity leave, where we can extend maternity leave, where we can put into effect that democratic socialist consensus that we have been a part of over successive governments. Because I need to point out that the original legislation was legislation enacted under a Democratic Labour Party administration, and the continuation, deepening, expansion of it is taking place under a Barbados Labour Party administration. I say that to say that Barbados has benefited from that consensus, that democratic socialist consensus that seeks to build a society. All of us have agreed to it. All of us have, through our actions, demonstrated that we are committed to it. Today, this Barbados Labour Party says we support the development of our children, we support our women folk who become mothers, we support our men folk who become fathers. We believe that together we can build a just society, a society that looks after its children, a society that looks after the caregivers of our children, a society that builds based on the equality of all of us who reside here. And so, Mr. Speaker, with those few words, I have the honor of commending this bill to this honorable chamber and asking that it be read a second time. Thank you very much.
Is yourself?
I'm obliged to you, sir. Just to send a message that I do not consider myself disadvantaged by receiving the legislation only when I came here and being given notice that this matter would have been debated yesterday afternoon. I'm not disadvantaged. I come here, sir, and I discover, as I always do, that the legislation is written in English, and I will offer my response to the legislation. Now, this act today touches a number of issues. It touches the issue of sex, gender, and you will hear me say that sex and gender are not synonymous. It touches culture and it touches language. And of course, it touches the law. Now, just let me, by way of introduction, explain for the Honourable Chamber and for the people of Barbados I'm in your hands, sir.
Continue, Honourable Member.
I'm obliged to you, sir. Having begun as I did, I think I am duty-bound to say to our audience why I advance the argument that this legislation, though only extending itself over 26 pages, touches all those issues. And I repeat, the issues of sex, gender, culture, language, and the law. Now, it comes here today to tell the people of Barbados that whereas leave pursuant to pregnancy was available only to mothers, it is now extended to fathers. So we've had maternity leave in the past, and now we have paternity leave. And obviously the government intends to congratulate itself for that advance in the law. But we intend to objectively critique this legislation because there are portions of it which do invite some concern. But just to indicate that in a debate like this, we must tell our audience why this legislation is necessary today. I did say to you, Your Honor, that it touches the matter of gender. Now, a lot of people are not aware that, as I said earlier, and I'll say it now, gender and sex are not synonymous. Gender is socially ascribed, sex is biologically ascribed. So that when social scientists speak about gender issues, they're speaking of human beings who are spoken of according to a social ascription and not biological. Sex is biological, gender is socially ascribed. So we need to let the debate begin with agreement at that point. And this legislation is largely about both. This legislation is about gender and it is about sex. Now, how did this concept of gender emerge? Gender is rooted in matters of division of labor. And by that I mean, in earlier times, men were thought to be the ones capable to do certain jobs, and women were thought to be the ones who were capable only of doing certain other jobs. So that you had, for example, truck driving. You would not have found a lady driving a truck. And I remember well in the 1970s, I think it was, when the first female bus driver was employed by the Transport Board. That became an issue on the news. It was covered quite liberally on the news. And so that is how you stereotype the sexes, that one sex can do only certain jobs and the other sex, certain other jobs are reserved for that sex. And you call those gender roles. In other words, while you have the jobs dividing themselves between the sexes, it is more about gender than it is about sex, because it is socially ascribed. The job of or rather the habit that says only a man can be a bus driver, that's socially ascribed until you discover that a woman can do the job. And so the issue of gender becomes neutralized when women begin to do these jobs. And the best expression of that, promoted even by Hollywood, you had movies and the doctors were always men and the nurses were always the women. And this question of nurses having to be women, that was a cultural conundrum which was exposed by the language male nurse. And for many years, people in Barbados used the term male nurse without recognizing, well, what is this that causes a nurse who is a man to be called a male nurse, as if it were some special category. Perhaps it may have been a special category only when they went to collect certain people to take them down to Black Rock. They used to send the men, you call them male nurses. But apart from that, the society could not understand how you would go to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital and there's a man there called a male nurse, when a male nurse really is a conundrum, a cultural conundrum exposed by this nomenclature of male nurse, which really means nothing. A man can be a nurse as well as a woman can also be a nurse. And so that is how this issue of sex and gender, that is how those issues collide with each other. And we come up with these stereotypes. And today's legislation will be, or examining today's legislation, will become an examination of those stereotypes of male and male roles and female roles. And the question as to if a mother is entitled to leave further to pregnancy, the legislators will need to explain why a man, although he doesn't physically deliver, why should he have leave? And of course, everyone agrees that as parents, equally in the process of child making, both parties should have that leave. Now, I did say there's something of a cultural conundrum when we try to determine who is entitled to what and whether that should be based on sex or gender. And I'll be brief on this, sir. It was in the book, In the Castle of My Skin by George Lamin, when he came up with a very interesting phraseology for the first time in that book. Early in that book, he spoke of my mother who fathered me. Beg your pardon, sir. That's in the most famous Barbadian book, In the Castle of My Skin, written by George Lamin, my mother who fathered me. And here it was, Mr. Lamin was fusing gender roles, the phenomenon of the matrifocal family in Barbados, the family that was led by a woman where the father was physically absent. And that phraseology became so important that it became the title of a book by a sociologist. You know about that, sir. You're a Look, I love to come here and address you on these matters. You're a sociologist and you're a lawyer, one of the few in this parliament. Edith Clarke, the title of her book, My Mother Who Fathered Me. And that spoke to the fusion of roles, gender roles. Here we are again, making the distinction and the important distinction between sex and gender. And here it is, you had the gender role fused within one sex, within the woman. So that illustrates the point that we are making. And in her book, Edith Clark identified the phenomenon of matrifocality within the Caribbean family, that I think it was about, you know, sir, it was about 70% of the families in Jamaica, certainly, and in the Caribbean, were led by women, dominated by women, in the absence of the father. And indeed, there are those who will tell you that even where a father was present, that the practical circumstances would indicate to men who do not mind that the real leaders in the house are women. A lot of men don't wish to admit that, but when one really examines parental and child relationships and parental vis-a-vis parental relationships, that quite often, women take the lead, and men are not to be offended by that. And so we come to the legislation. Having identified the issues of sex and gender and culture and language and stereotypes, we come to this legislation. And how do we relate this legislation, or how do we consider today's legislation in relation to those issues of sex and gender and culture and language and stereotypes, and indeed rights, interests, and entitlements of men and women in relation to this issue of pregnancy? That is where, Your Honor, I come to a portion of the Act with which I have some profound difficulty. Now, we are agreed that, and I think all of us will be agreed, that in a modern, developing democracy, both men and women participate in pregnancy by definition. By definition, the beginning of the thing involves participation by both sexes. I didn't say genders, by both sexes. And I think this act concerns itself less with sex and more with gender, because again, we're coming down to roles. What is the man's role in relation to pregnancy? What is the woman's role in relation to pregnancy? All this is just an explanation as to the origins and the need for legislation. And so, let us, since this is legislation, and since legislation tends to either create rights or to prohibit acts, today's legislation is doing both. It is creating a right in the man, a right that a woman used to have, and the Honourable Member for St. Peter did correctly say that there was previous legislation, I think 1975, I think that is the year, in which the women were guaranteed by a very compassionate government and society. They were guaranteed maternity leave. So it is nothing new. What is new and what is progressive is the extension of the right of leave pursuant to pregnancy. You want now to extend that to men, and justifiably so, and justly so. But here's my difficulty with the legislation, and this is not to be contentious, this is not to confront the other side. I think a mature parliament is such a pleasant place to be. This is not a place where the ritual of insult must visit every proceeding. You know, let us contend academically, intellectually, and morally. And we can come here, I can come here and criticize a piece of legislation without hearing all kinds of foolishness about myself. But this parliament is really not a place for gully bore. And this ritual of personal insult, let us press on like a mature parliament and discuss and debate legislation in a manner that advances this parliament and advances the interests of this country, certainly in terms of legislation. I want to bring your attention, sir, to Section 4 of this Act. Section 4. And if I am wrong, and I have a right to be wrong, as do we all have rights to be wrong. If I am wrong, tell me I'm wrong. If one is right, take the legislation back to whoever approved it before it came here and let them do it properly, as they undertook to do last week Friday in the other legislation against which the people of this country are rebelling. But that's not the point today. This is the point today. We are discussing the extension of rights of leave to men and women, or rather to men pursuant to pregnancy. Here is what Section 4 of the legislation says. Permit me, sir. And this is under the rubric, grant of maternity leave to employees. A female employee, and this is Section 4, subsection 3. A female employee shall, in order to qualify for a grant of maternity leave, be employed for at least 12 months in continuous employment by the employer from whom she requests such leave. Now, what that seems to be saying to those of us who read it in English and understand it in English and understand English is that you seem to have created the right to receive maternity leave. But here it is, the legislation which gives the right is also making that right conditional on the period of employment. So I suppose you're telling the lady now when she can become pregnant, within the context of her employment, that she must be employed for at least 12 months in continuous employment by the employer from whom she requests such leave. Now, we spoke of a convergence or the intersection of matters of language and culture and stereotypes. Now, pregnancy is biological. Employment is commercial. Here is this legislation seeming to create a situation in which biology meets commerce. Now, everybody has a right to become pregnant. And everybody will have an opportunity for employment. But here's biology meeting commerce, and under this act, it seems that commerce will triumph. Because you're saying to a lady that she can make an application, that she can qualify for a grant of maternity leave only if employed for at least 12 months in continuous employment by the employer from whom she requests such leave. You've created a right further to what God creates biologically, but you're making that right conditional on man-made commerce. I have a right to be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. And maybe there's something in this legislation, maybe there's some proviso hidden somewhere that will say that one is wrong. And I invite the Honourable Member for St. Peter to take a note and to get up and correct all of us who are making this point, that biology meets commerce and commerce triumphs, because this legislation is saying to a lady that she can apply, or she qualifies, I beg your pardon, that she qualifies for maternity leave only if, from a specific employer, only if she has been in that employment for 12 months. Now, I did hear the Honourable Member for St. Peter speak of the democratic socialist ideal. I don't know how this fits within the democratic socialist ideal, that you're asking a lady to somehow locate her pregnancy within a period of employment. I don't think that's very kind, you know. I don't think that is very kind. And if you thought, Your Honor, that it applied only to the lady, Section 5 pertaining to the man does the same thing. Section 5, subsection 5 says, under the rubric grant of paternity leave to employees, and in this event meaning male employees, and this is where you've extended the right to male employees, it says, Section 5, subsection 5, a male employee must, in order to qualify for a grant of paternity leave, be employed for at least 12 months in continuous employment by the employer from whom he requests such leave. Again, the same situation. In relation to the lady, you're saying to her she must have been in that employment for at least 12 months before she can qualify, before she can send in the request for maternity leave. I repeat, biology has met commerce and commerce triumphs. This may be a lady who could have had difficulty becoming pregnant. Maybe on the third pregnancy, moves into a new job. And simply because she has not been there for 12 months, you disqualify her from requesting maternity leave from that employer, because the request really is not between the employee and the government. It is between the employee and her private employer, the company with which she works. So that, and you know this, sir, issues of constitutionality don't arise. You know the state action doctrine, that constitutional rights may be breached only by the state and not by a private entity. Hopefully in the new Republican Constitution, when they find somebody to draft it, they will abolish the state action doctrine, but that's another issue, sir. The point here is that the legislation, while intending, and perhaps the intent is noble, but I invite the honorable member for St. Peter, who says that he is a democratic socialist and that he is part of the democratic socialist consensus between the parties. I invite him, unless I'm really wrong, unless I've read something wrong, I invite him to revisit that and not to make a request for maternity leave conditional on a period of employment. As I said, the honorable member spoke of previous legislation in which he conjectures that a man may have written it. And therefore, he comes with a sense of conscientiousness and compassion. Well, with that same sense of conscientiousness and compassion, I would invite the honorable member for St. Peter to revisit the draftsman, revisit his advisors, revisit those who shape and formulate social policy, to consider that that provision within the legislation may be a fairly unkind provision as it pertains to women and certainly as it pertains to men. If we are going to be boasting about how the law is advancing to treat men equally as it does women in circumstances of pregnancy, please, Your Honor, I ask through you, the honorable member for St. Peter, to reconsider the legislation and the full extent of the legislation. As I said, they gave it to me only well, I got it after I came here, so that while I was here in the first speaker this morning, I was here reading it and preparing my response. But I'm not disadvantaged, I'm not complaining. It's all written in English. And every week that I come here, and they fail to give me adequate notice, certainly as to the content of the legislation, and where they continue to give me inadequate notice as to what will be debated in here, the one good thing they're doing, sir, they're writing it in English. And you, they're reading it in English, and I read it in English, and I understand it. So I invite the honorable member for St. Peter, who has had the legislation in his hands for a long time.
Honourable Member for.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really didn't want to have to raise on a point of order, but the honourable member is indeed misleading the House. Now, I am sure he takes great pleasure in tainting others, but I will not, in this position as Leader of Government Business, allow him to taint me along with the others. And, sir, I want to make it very clear that notice was given of this bill by the Honourable Clerk of Parliament. We would have received notice of the bill via email, as all honourable members do. Perhaps because the honourable member has not spent a lot of time in this place, he's not aware that he should be checking his emails or that he should be checking the parliamentary website from time to time to see when the bills are updated. But in addition to that, and notwithstanding the fact that that is the process, I also, Mr. Speaker, on every occasion ensures that the honourable member, through his 2 cell phone contacts that I have been given, provide him with an update as to the bills that we will be doing and introducing into this place, and pay him the courtesy of so advising if there is a short notice or if it is that there is something that is being done in an emergency. So I would not want honourable members in this place or anybody who is listening to believe that the honourable member in any way is being disadvantaged by the provision of notice being given in relation to this matter. And I would go further, Mr. Speaker. On the last occasion when we reconvened to come back to this place, the honourable member, if he checks either of his 2 cell phones, will see a message indicating what we were doing last week, Friday, and he will also see a message indicating what was on the order paper coming for this particular Tuesday. And therefore, the honourable member's comments should be struck from the record because it is inaccurate and it is misleading. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member sure that is in his cell phone. You're sure of that?
I'm absolutely positive, and if I need to make my cell phone messages to the honourable member available to the House or the records, I am prepared to
if you want veracity in relation to the evidence, as the presiding officer, I can ask for the availability of the document to make it a document of the House so that be the most clarification that he need. Right. If he's not aware, I will ask him if he has those 2 cell phones available and if he has the correct numbers, just for verification purposes. Continue, honourable member. Honourable member, you have heard the Leader of Government Business. You wish to refute what has been said in this honourable chamber, just for purposes of elucidation and clarification.
They're still talking.
No, continue, honourable.
I am going to repeat that I'm not complaining about anything.
But no, I didn't ask that. I mean, as it relates to the notice, you made a statement. Honourable member, you made a statement in relation to having been provided with short notice, which again spoke to your inability to read thoroughly what is now before the House. Is the honourable member correct in saying that she would have provided you with the requisite notice via your cell phones, sir?
When I began, I said I was not complaining about anything. And I also will add to that, I am not complaining about anything. And if you press me, sir, at 5, and I'm not complaining. I have told you, sir, it is written in English. And I will say that I got it at 5:45 p.m. yesterday, and it matters not to me. It is written in English. It came to me at 5:45. The legislation I read in here today, and apart from that,
5:45.
Apart from that, I have no desire to speak with the Leader of Government Business at night.
Right. It was not 5:45.
I have no such desire. So let us press on, sir.
Honourable member, it was 5:45 p.m. Honourable member for Price Chairs. It was 5:45 p.m. or 5:45 a.m. this morning. Just for clarification.
I don't intend to make my private cell phone any document to the House. I got this message. It was transmitted at 5:45 p.m. post-meridian, and I am not complaining.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member, if he casts his mind to his emails, he will also see that the honourable House would have emailed him the copy of the bill as it did all other honourable members. I believe that is at yesterday afternoon at 2:45 p.m. And that was followed by my message to him, reminding him, because I know that he does not check his cell phone for his constituents, and he doesn't check it sometimes for the house, but I pay him the courtesy, as I did when he was on this side, and make sure that he is aware of what is being conducted in this place. I repeat that the honourable member was given notice that the family leave bill would be coming on today's date, the 12th of August, and I reminded him yesterday afternoon after the notice was given and the bill was laid that he would have been able to review it for preparation for today's sitting, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable, thank you. But he said he's not complaining, so he can continue. He's not complaining.
Much obliged, sir. Much obliged. As to the honourable member's desires to speak to me at night, I think the lady doth protest too much. Let us press on, sir. I will have the conversations during the sunlight hours. Now, we were within the body of Section 4, subsection 3 of the legislation, and in what we hope will be more sober exchanges, we are inviting the Honourable Member of St. Peter, who describes himself as a democratic socialist, beg your pardon, sir, to revisit sections 4.3 and sections, I beg your pardon, let me say that again. I will invite the Honourable Member for St. Peter to revisit sections 4, subsection 3 and section 5, subsection 5 of the legislation, which seem to limit a right which is given, the right to maternity and paternity leave respectively, is now limited, and not only limited, but conditional upon the period of employment. That you cannot, in this country, be employed for less than 12 months and make an application for maternity or paternity leave. In fact, the legislation said you do not qualify. So that if the God-given beauty of pregnancy occurs at any time, and that time occurs when you are in employment for 11 months, there we are. You do not qualify. As I said, biology has met commerce, and under this government's legislation, commerce has triumphed. Yet we call ourselves democratic socialists. But let us go on and show how this sin, how this legislative sin is deepened. We turn the page and we come to section 11. Now, Your Honor, I have told this chamber that the rights pursuant to pregnancy, the rights of maternity and paternity leave have been limited or made conditional by commerce, by a period of employment. But the legislation does not only impose a civil limit, the legislation becomes criminal. At section 11, Your Honor, here's what it says. Section 11, subsection 2. An employee who knowingly gives false information pursuant to sections 4 and 5 is guilty of an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of $10,000 or to imprisonment for a term of 24 months or to both. The pregnant lady can go to prison. The pregnant lady can go to prison. The father of the child who gives, according to them, false information pertaining to the time of pregnancy can go to prison. or be fined, or both. So that this is where the legislation makes its descent. Here we are speaking of the nobility of pregnancy and the right to have that pregnancy treated with dignity and respect. But, as I said, and I repeat, and it is worthy of repetition, the right becomes conditional on commerce. Pregnancy now relates itself to a period of a contract of employment, and pregnancy loses. But that is civil. That is a civil exchange. That is the civil law. Here's the criminal law now intervening into that set of circumstances. And the criminal law is saying at Section 11 that where false information is given, and obviously that false information, according to what this act says, would have been given by the father or the mother. And who intervenes? The police. Because this relationship now becomes a criminal offense. What's the criminal law doing here? That a person is trying to receive a benefit. A person is trying to receive a benefit. Further to God's intervention into their lives to give them the gift of life. Further to pregnancy. And here is that beautiful set of human circumstances descending into an abyss of criminal conduct. How does this become possible? How does this become criminal conduct? How does the gift of life, the beauty of sex and pregnancy, become reduced to Section 11? What is the business of Section 11 in this? What is the business of the police in this arrangement? Is this right? How did it reach this point, Your Honor? Can one seriously contemplate, as the Honourable Member for St. Peter says, in the invocation of democratic socialist principles, in having criminality into this arrangement, into this relationship? How does it get, for whose benefit? For whose benefit? The precious employer? Simply because somebody got pregnant? Simply because there may be information given as to dates that are inaccurate? I don't think, even if the framers wanted to do what they have done at sections 4 and 5, with which I disagree, but even if they wanted to leave it, even if they wanted to trample biology on the anvil of commerce, need they, so that they disadvantage both mother and father? They don't qualify for maternity or paternity leave. But need they have taken it into the zone of criminality, the zone of criminal conduct? What about that becomes criminal conduct? I don't think it is criminal conduct for the Employment Rights Tribunal not to have sat for the last many years and visited disadvantage on people who were dismissed from their places of employment. A lot of people in this country have been severely disadvantaged by the closure of the Employment Rights Tribunal. Nobody's getting locked up for that. But here we have what we felt, saw it for the first time when I came here this morning, what we felt was a harmless and noble piece of legislation coming to this Parliament on this day, suddenly criminalizing people. And the only thing they've done is that they've had sex, one becomes pregnant, and both of them become entitled to leave, but it says, no, you got to be employed for 12 months before you can qualify for that leave. Oh, okay, that's fine. That may be the government's position. But then the government goes farther and says, we can prosecute you in the criminal courts. And not only prosecute you, but we can imprison you for 2 years, or we can fine you $10,000, or both. Where's the crime? Where's the criminal intent? Where's the mens rea? Where's the actus reus? I don't understand it, sir. So that I am willing to be told by the Honourable Member for St. Peter that there has been some grave error of interpretation, and that there is something in this legislation which negates Section 4, subsection 3, Section 5, subsection 5, and Section 11, subsection 2. I am willing to hear, but I am not seeing it. But even seeing the legislation here this morning for the first time, I hope that I've read it entirely. And I hope, for the sake of the virtue of our common humanity, that there is something that elevates this terrible dilemma that confronts pregnancy and the right to paternity leave. I hope there is something that elevates these sections from the abyss of inhumanity. And so, Your Honor, while ordinarily we remain supportive of the extension of the right of leave pursuant to pregnancy, we support, of course, maternity leave, and we support paternity leave. We cannot support a provision that makes that right conditional upon a commercial or contractual relationship. And we certainly cannot and will not and must not support the criminalization of the exchange of information between a poor and hapless applicant for leave, where it is said that the information given is false. I think Mary and Joseph were penalized. They were penalized. She was pregnant. A lot of people don't know that Mary was actually single. They weren't married, you know, sir. Mary wasn't married. Mary was a single mother. But she was pregnant. And it was the most beautiful pregnancy for Christians all over the world, ever. And that's why every December we pause in our labors, no pun intended, to acknowledge it. But Mary was single and pregnant, and she received the punishment of exclusion from the comfort of the inner chambers. This legislation today goes somewhat farther, not only is the lady punished with disqualification for maternity leave, but she's criminalized. So she can be prosecuted, fined, and confined to prison. I humbly and respectfully ask the Honourable Member for St. Peter to revisit this legislation. If this government is at all conscientious and compassionate, if this government is at all humble enough to recognize this error and assuming that it is an error, and if it is not an error, I am humble enough to withdraw from the position that I take. And perhaps there is something in the act which makes erroneous what I am submitting. Perhaps there is. But in the event that there is not, this government must now face its public. And this government must say to its public that while it is boasting in democratic socialist tradition of having extended the right of leave pursuant to pregnancy to men, this government must now explain to men, and indeed to women, why when the relationship occurs between biology and commerce, why must commerce be the victor? And if that is a part of the government's tradition, well, so be it. I mean, we all have our philosophical positions on matters, except that the Honourable Member for St. Peter says that the government is part of a democratic socialist tradition. Maybe this is not democratic socialist. For those of us who understand a little about democratic socialism, this certainly is not democratic socialism. And I will conclude by asking the honourable member if he chooses to leave Section 4.3 and Section 5.5 in the legislation, please have enough of a conscience to remove the element of criminality from a situation in which the beauty of pregnancy and the virtue of life is contained within this legislation. I see no reason to leave it, really. I see no reason to leave it. I certainly see no reason to leave Section 11 in this legislation. I repeat, I told the story of Mary and Joseph. No greater historical account in virtue and humility. Similarly, as in this situation, a lady just gets a job, a man just gets a job. The lady becomes pregnant by that man, and that lady are bound by legislation which disqualifies them from maternity and paternity leave simply because they have not worked for a period of 12 months. And I'm going to read it to be certain. I'm going to read it for certainty, sir. And I'm going to read Section 5, subsection 5. A male employee must, in order to qualify for a grant of paternity leave, be employed for at least 12 months in continuous employment by the employer from whom he requests such leave. I repeat, sir. The rights of the mother and father become conditional on a period of employment, become conditional on a contractual arrangement. I don't think that is right. I really do not think that is right. I don't know how you manage somehow to relate pregnancy and the rights which flow from pregnancy to commerce and contract. I don't know. If that is a moral position, well, I accept that I am taking a moral position. And if that moral position is to be defeated by something called legal reasoning, I stay with the moral position. If that moral position must be defeated by commercial and contractual expediency, I continue to take that moral position. I cannot depart from it. I cannot depart from it because all of us in here know the story of the birth of the greatest man in circumstances of equal adversity. Equal adversity. And the punishment that his parents received, the indignity of the stable. Well, here is the modern stable of Joseph and Mary. Exclusion from the right to maternity and paternity leave simply because you have not worked with that employer continuously for at least 12 months. I don't know what is magical about 12 months. I don't. What we do know, and it is not magical, it is miraculous. Birth. The miracle of birth, which is responsible for the presence of all 30 people in this chamber. And how dare we as men and women who are the products of that miracle called birth condemn a man and a woman to a denial of maternity and paternity leave when we claim that we are doing it. How dare we seek to further condemn them to a criminal court? I've said enough, sir. I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I therefore beg to move that the House be suspended until 3:15 p.m.
3:15? The question is that this honourable chamber be suspended until 3:15 p.m. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 3:15 p.m.